All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. It is Tuesday, and you know what that means. Time to dive deeper into classic teachings on spiritual truth and enlightenment coming to us from the wisdom of Dr. David R. Hawkins. And we pulled this off the shelf so we can attempt to begin to help ourselves, ladies and gentlemen, because last time when we finished our series here, reading in Obstacles for Spiritual Growth, before we get to paranormal realms and dimensions, we were going through the dangers of the ego and the secrets of negative feelings and how to find happiness. And I think it was the most profound explanation of that I've found put so succinctly. I haven't come across a book that has put it into words. Normally, I hear this teaching in lectures or in speeches on the subject, whether it be from Dr. Wayne W. Dyer or David Hawkins or many, many other influential leaders in the spiritual, in the mystical, and the philosophical community. And so, with that being said, I want to begin with this little bit where we left off last week because it was just so powerful about negative feelings and creating your happiness and experiencing a much happier life. And that's what we're all about here on this channel, is to seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment, through a greater awareness or understanding of the nature of ourselves and of our minds and of our lives and the world around us and all of that. So let me recap this wonderful little bit. It begins by saying, quote, all negative feelings are linked with each other. You want something because you feel unfulfilled. So if something gets in the way of that something that you want, now you get angry. And now think of how many of us have done this in our lives, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you for being here. It's a very common routine and pattern, and it makes me wonder if this was instilled to us because this is a normal function of our ego, of our minds, or a normal function that has been created and we have been indoctrinated in society to behave this way. However, all negative feelings are linked with each other. You want something because you feel unfulfilled. You feel incomplete, not whole. But remember that you are whole and complete in each moment and need not chase after anything in order to be complete. However, this is not how society and our own subconscious and our ego works. It wants us to get something because we feel unfulfilled. So if something gets in the way, now we get angry. And now we get frustrated. And we realize that if we do get it, we're just going to begin to be prideful and attached. But if you're prideful in your ownership to that thing that you wanted and then got, possibly, now you have to fear that somebody will take it away from you, or that you won't get it entirely to begin with. And you could see how all of us have dealt with this in our lives. So then you get puffed up and you have to, if you do have it, so one thing leads to another. Your anger is that somebody is interfering or blocking you from being able to get this thing that you want. And this can be, I experience it myself, ladies and gentlemen, one of the most frustrating things, which is fine because there's a lot worse experiences in life, but we're talking about finding happiness in our moments, and our moments make up our lives. So if we can increase the quality of each of our moments, then we can increase the quality of our lives. So then you get puffed up if you do have it. So one thing leads to another. Your anger is that somebody is interfering. Negative feelings are all based on this same problem. better described, not insensitively, as a delusion or as an illusion, something that's very hard to see, a pattern that you get into that it's very easy to not even notice that you're doing it. So, like, so many people don't realize that we're practicing whatever it is that we're doing. So if we're having negative thoughts a long time, for a lot of the time, taking up most of our moments, that's what we are practicing. And so therefore, the more we practice it, the more we will be able to do that without even thinking about it. Subconsciously, unconsciously, we will be having whatever kind of thoughts that we practiced on having. And this may sound new to some of you, possibly, and maybe even pretty out there, that you can practice to have certain kind of thoughts. But this is the secret of a habit. And this is the secret of creating behavioral feedback loops and behavioral patterns, so that eventually you can create the habit or the behavior that you desire. However, you might be asking yourself, how can we possibly do this? And I would say consciously. You have to think about it. And that might be contradicting and paradoxical. You're saying, well, you're telling me I have to get rid of my negative thoughts by thinking. But that is the problem to begin with. You would think. However, it is by on purpose, the old fake it till you make it, if you will, that we will begin to change and rewire our brains, but more simply put, begin to change our behavior patterns through practicing a new habit. Practicing forcing yourself to be appreciative and grateful, and forcing yourself to have a positive perspective, because perspective is the most powerful thing when it comes to changing these negative thought patterns. Is so often it's based on a perspective that we were just describing, from this position that you feel unfulfilled. So if something gets in the way of the thing you want because of that feeling of unfulfilledness, then you have this anger loop, and we're practicing this negative pattern that becomes subconscious, and it just becomes a feedback loop that whenever we have this stimulus, a trigger, some call it, the cause, then we instantly go into what we have practiced, the pattern, the behavioral loop that we know how to do best. And we begin, like muscle memory, doing it automatically without even realizing that we're doing it. I mean, when someone throws a ball, for instance, and practices that for a very long time, they begin to be able to do it in ways that in the beginning they had to think about how to position their hand and how to move the wrist correctly, how to release. All of these things you had to really think about hard. But after much practice, all this happens. You don't even think about it. You're actually thinking about something else continued in the process and the practice. This works the same for our negative thoughts, our negative feelings, and our positive opportunities to experience life. It depends on what we practice, ladies and gentlemen. And so you get puffed up. If you do have it, one thing leads to another. Anger is that somebody is blocking you. This illusion, or this delusion that he described, we can see now is hard to see for probably many of us, most of us out here just existing in the world, because as we've talked about in the past, we're not some gurus up on some mountaintop or in a temple. We have to, I mean, if you are, then please let me know in the comments. That would be very fascinating. But the point of that is it's very difficult to get to these high levels of thinking and personal introspection and personal awareness, and kind of coming to realize what it is that you are even thinking, becoming the witness, which is something we spoke about a couple weeks ago in the last chapter of this book, right before lifting the consciousness level of mankind, was becoming the witness. And that is most important to this process. And so for us that are just out here existing in the world, going to work or doing whatever it is we have to do to make it in society, it's very difficult for us to see beyond this illusion or delusion that can lead us to believe it, that the source, and this is the most important point of all, can lead us to believing that the source of our happiness is something or someone or somewhere outside of yourself and ourselves. And this is the most tragic mistake or unfortunate predicament that we find ourselves in my opinion. This is where so many people spend their entire lives searching for happiness. They can become millionaires, very successful, and they find themselves, as we've seen in many examples, especially recent times, these very successful and famous people, Robin Williams and many others, just the one that popped ahead, that just blows your mind. It's like, what? How could, for somebody who just works a 9 to 5 and pays rent, doesn't own grand properties, and, doesn't have all the staples that our society would tell us that makes us feel fulfilled and complete. And you are, to have the ultimate happiness because you've won and you have it all. Even those people find themselves, after they've gained everything they can, without that fulfillment that we all are seeking to discover. Once again, that's why I say seek to achieve and maintain this happiness. How do we do that? Through a greater understanding of ourselves and our subconscious thoughts and our ego. And what this chapter was entitled, The Dangers of a Narcissistic Ego. And that is exactly what leads us to that delusion or illusion that's so hard to see, that causes us to believe that happiness and the source of our happiness and that what will give us that fulfillment is somewhere outside of us. And it is not. It is within each and every one of us. It is within you. It is within me, ladies and gentlemen. It is within, I think, even those things that are not as animate as we are. But that would be a deeper subject that would go into the spark of divinity or the spirit, or, those deeper, more mystical, spiritual subjects where we always go on this channel. So it wouldn't be outside the bounds, but you know what I mean. So let us continue in this little section, because we begin to get in this routine of telling ourselves, oh, when I get that thing, then I'll finally be there. Then I'll finally be complete and fulfilled and whole, and remember the person that had it all and was wonderfully successful. Now, we can't know for certain anyone's entire experience, so it's hard to say. But as we find, happiness isn't out there. It's something that we have to create within ourselves to be able to bring to life. We do this thing like, when I get that title, when I get that car. It's back to the words of David Hawkins here. I've only read a little paragraph and been rambling most of the time here, so I appreciate you if you're enjoying this and if you're getting value, then thank you so much. When I get that title, when I get that car, when I get that job, when I get that income, oh, when I get that, there's always a get, when I get that relationship, when I get the recognition I believe I deserve. I mean, I'm not like making light of any of this. I want to point that out, that these are all very serious things for us in our lives. And these are actually usually the most important and most serious things for our lives, especially the relationships and the material, the recognition, far more than a material thing. To be famous. Oh, when I get on that TV program, then I'll finally feel like everyone likes me. And as you can see, even beyond the physical, these are much deeper things that if we had the time and the contemplation and meditation and introspection or self-reflection, then maybe, and also maybe the correct guidance from a very young age to begin with, to teach us that this is not the way. There is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. It is what we must bring to any one of these processes. Imagine being happy while you're trying to get the car in the entire process. And this is really the secret. The secret is to detach from the results and outcomes of your desires and actually find joy and pleasure in the process of attempting to create the desired reality for yourself. But that, I think, is very high level and very difficult for many of us to get to easily and to stay there. And so I feel you. And I feel the seriousness of when I finally get what it is that I need to feel fulfilled, because I have those feelings, ladies and gentlemen. I am no master. I am no guru. Be your own master. Guide your own spirit. Master your own ascension. And be your own guru, ladies and gentlemen. And have great discernment, I'll add. It's most important. Greatest discernment, especially nowadays with all this wild amounts of interesting different forms of entertainment, education, and information that are coming out through different various platforms that we all have access to. Well, at least, you know what I mean. Not all of us do have access to, and I might say those might be the lucky ones. But that would be very arrogant to say. I'm just saying there's a lot of distraction within as much entertainment information that there is out there. And so with that point, I'm going to do something I don't believe I have done yet. Just 1 second here. So I have this book here that my mom got for me. It's a wonderful book. I've said for many years that I wanted to write a book. But as you can tell, if you've been here on the channel for some time, then it's very easy for me to go from one subject to 25 other subjects very rapidly. And it's very difficult for me to focus on any one subject. However, happiness is the most important thing for me. I don't know why. I mean, you could say that happiness is a petty thing. And really it's fulfillment or feeling content, what we really want. But to me, it's all the same thing. I mean, to have a true joy, a true appreciation and reverence and an optimistic and positive perspective about your situation and where you are and loving who you are and everything that you have and being, all of these kind of positive psychology and, spiritual or all of these positive kind of thoughts, philosophies, all wrapped up into the overarching term of happiness. So I wanted to read this to you because I wrote this down some time ago, and I find it applies perfectly to what we're talking about here today. It was going to be the beginning to this book, but like I said, I never know where to go. It's much easier for me to just ramble to you or to this camera which will eventually become you, ladies and gentlemen. However, we're always wanting to find the way to happiness, like we have been describing this entire time. And in the process of doing so, we fail to recognize that happiness is the way. In short, happiness is not a result, it's not an outcome, but rather a process that goes throughout our entire lives, ladies and gentlemen. And it's in learning this process of how to bring happiness to life that we can not only experience more happiness in our lives, but experience greater health through the biology of a belief, which is a different book. But that talks about how happiness or positive thinking patterns actually totally influence your physiological state as well. You know what I mean? It can influence our body and our health. So if we can begin learning this process, that is a lifelong discipline of how to bring happiness to life, that we can not only experience more happiness in our lives, but experience greater health, which leads to more comfort, more security, more ease, peace of mind, and serenity, allowing for a clarity, greater focus, more intuition, giving us more opportunities for success in all aspects of our lives. So as you can see, if we want to be happy, healthy, successful people, we must first understand the difference. Let's see, most important. We must first understand, recognize, and notice the difference between happiness as a process or activity rather than a result or a reward. We must begin to know and understand and learn the difference between happiness as an activity, a process that we bring to life, as compared to a result or a reward or an outcome that we get from whatever the process is that we do, because then you could see the process would not be nearly as wonderful. And honestly, I would say 99% of life is the process. The results are very instantaneous, and then it's on to the next process. Let me continue, though, with what I have written in the past. And understand the connection between happiness, health, success, fulfillment, peace, and ultimately come to know the true nature of our existence here, or what many would call God, whether the name is different in different cultures, but throughout time and history, all cultures around the world, all peoples have described something, whether it be a non-spiritual thing, but have described something that is much greater, that is outside of ourselves, that is the cause behind all things, that we are also a part of in many philosophies. But whatever name it is given, many times called God, this thing seems to be the most important influence, underlying energy force and essence and source for all of us. And so I come back to the question, so if we want all of that, everything we've just described there, getting to being able to bring happiness to life so we can begin to experience greater health, and then be able from that position, or greater well-being from that position, to be able to have more peace of mind, serenity, then leading to greater clarity and awareness and focus ability, giving us greater opportunities for success in all aspects of our lives. And so this can lead us, this ability, this, if we can understand the process or activity rather than a result or a reward, and understand the connection between happiness, health, success, fulfillment, peace, and ultimately come to know the true nature of our existence here, or what some may call God. But so what if we want all of that? I mean, it sounds good, right? Oh, sure, yeah, sounds wonderful. How do we do this? Well, it's easy to say. But what is that process? What is the process that we were referencing there earlier? That is it is a process rather than a result. And it is in learning this process that we can experience all of these wonderful things that I've been listing here in this half a page that I wrote. But if we want all, I mean, it sounds good, but what is the process? So if we know it's a process and we want to achieve all these great things that come from living at this higher level, how do we do it? How do we do this process? What do we have to do? Well, that brings me, I mean, I think this brings us to what many refer to as manifesting or creating on purpose. Creating or co-creating our lives, what I like to call the science of lucky people. And that would lead us to the keys of manifesting and unlocking the ability to create our lives and ultimately experience that fulfillment and that happiness and all of those things that we want so much, not only for ourselves, but all of those around us in our lives. And I find that a wonderful sentiment. And I thought now was an appropriate time to read that little bit. And maybe one day I will finish all of those keys and what the process is and how we can do this. Because it has been spoken about by many, many authors and mystics and poets and philosophers and sages of the ages, ladies and gentlemen. But let me continue with the words of Dr. David R. Hawkins now. I think we'll just leave this video today about this subject, and we'll get into paranormal realms and dimensions next week. Because that, to me, it's just a totally different subject. And I really wanted to focus on this subject, this happiness. This idea of like, once I'm richer, then I'll be happy. And as you can see, this is a trap that just leads us through a cycle. And thinking that the good, thinking that the outcome is the good, when really it is the opposite. But once again, let me continue with the words of Dr. David R. Hawkins. There's always a gettingness about this. If anything stands in your way to getting this now, you hate it, and you're angry at it, and you want to destroy it. And when you see one thing leads to another, then if you don't achieve it, you begin to feel this guilt and this self-blame, and you feel worthless. And then you feel depressed. And this is where many people find themselves. And it's unfortunate because, as you can see, it was through a practiced thought pattern, a repetitious subconscious or unconscious behavior in your thinking based on these illusions or delusions that the happiness or the fulfillment that you want is something outside of yourself. And that's where you get it from. Maybe that's more important, is that we believe and have been taught that that's where it is. It's out here. You have to get that thing you want. You have to, get the car, get the recognition, have people clap and say how wonderful you are. I mean, I even used to feel that way about doing these videos. Man, I didn't get enough views. It feels so terrible. Not the point. You haven't learned yet. The joy and the wonder of any of this is right here, right now, in this process of what I'm doing. I don't care if this gets 52 views. The only sad part about that is only 52 or a smaller number, whoever actually watches through this, will get this lesson. Because I think this lesson is profound and life-changing, life-altering, and extremely, extremely important for every human being to learn at a very, very young, early age. I think we'll title this video, What You Need to Know About Happiness and Negative Feelings. Maybe. The negative feelings part I'm not sure about, but what you need to know about happiness. Whew. Profound, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're getting value. If you are, consider subscribing, smash the like button. This is it's one of those topics I really love to go into, and it's so fun to share with you here in the premieres and in the comments later after the live chat premieres. But I just, once again, I appreciate so much each and every one of you that spends time here with me and Dr. David R. Hawkins and all the authors and poets and mystics and philosophers and sages of the ages, ladies and gentlemen. But that process that leads us, that unconscious process, because of the fact that we've been taught, or we subconsciously think that we have to get something outside of ourselves to feel that fulfillment. And don't worry, I understand. My mind was like, well, yeah, but it's extremely difficult and takes much work and diligence and practice to finally convince yourself and teach yourself that, oh, yeah, it isn't out there. I mean, you don't just get there. You're like, oh, yeah. Instantly, I realized that there is nothing outside of me. It is actually the within me that will allow me to experience the happiness, and then whatever is out there will be wonderful. It's not, you don't just get there immediately, ladies and gentlemen. This takes practice. That's why I started this video talking about practice. What you practice will become what you can do automatically without thinking about it. And think of how many people, maybe even including yourself, but if you want to stay away from the self introspection at the moment, so many people call it self-judgment, but when you're looking at yourself and realizing the truth of your nature to make improvement, that is just fine. You're not bad. We are all on our own path, exactly where we should be, to learn the things that we need to continue to learn and grow. All the negative feelings are based on the assumption, Dr. David R. Hawkins continues, that what you need is outside of yourself. No matter what you say, when it comes to these lines such as, oh, and once I'm famous, or once I'm educated, once I'm older, once I'm richer, then I'll be happy. No matter what you say, it always puts fulfillment, the contentment, the peace, the comfort, the happiness, all of those things that could lead us, like I wrote in my little thing earlier, to where we want to go, the ultimate understanding of ourselves, to have that health, that success, and all the things that anybody wants in life to experience, but to also have that peace and fulfillment and contentment to be able to enjoy it. We need to be able to no longer put our fulfillment off into the future. We need to be here now, arriving rather than striving. Because when we're striving for something, when we do finally get there, we don't know how to be there. And be like, wow, this is wonderful. I've done it. I mean, just think that for yourself. You've done it. You won. Like, it may not feel like it wherever you are right now in your life, but honestly, everything from here on out is bonus. And more realistically, you actually won and fulfilled your purpose 10 years ago. And it's just been bonus since then. I mean, think of this. Wow. I already did what I was supposed to do. It might be sad for some, but for others, it might be relieving. It might be like, wow, okay, maybe I don't need to be striving so much. And maybe I should just enjoy and arrive where I am here now. Like Ram Dass, his greatest teaching. Be here now. And that can change everything for anyone. However, like I said, practice. It's very, this isn't easy for the majority of us. This is why I mentioned earlier, we're not on a mountaintop and in a temple. If we were, this would be a much easier process. However, so we're always, when we're putting it off in the future, when we're striving rather than arriving, and when we practice as arriving, then we can actually appreciate where we are rather than always putting it off. Oh, this appetizer is good, but I can't wait for the meal, not enjoying the appetite. And then the meal comes and you're like, can't wait for that dessert. You're like, yeah, but doesn't it taste good now? I mean, that's just another metaphor there, but we're always in that cycle. When we're in that process, we're always going from incomplete to incomplete. It's never there. We're never there. But then when you get what you want, there's always one better, and we push it off again. I knew. And then he goes into the topic of the rich people and how even if you get there, you don't know how to be there and appreciate it. Because once again, when we practice striving and the negative thought patterns, that's what we know how to do. I mean, striving could be something different from negative, but when we can begin to arrive and appreciate and practice positive thought patterns and behavioral feedback loops, then we can begin to experience the peace, the joy, the fulfillment, the contentment, the success, the health, the wealth, the happiness, all of those things that we've been looking for ourselves in our lives. And we will begin to be able to create in our lives what it is that we want for ourselves, because we will begin to have a new experience. We will begin to experience life in a new way because we have changed our thoughts and changed our life. When you change the way that you look at things, your perspective, the things that you look at change. In the way that you experience them, and you begin to experience an entirely new world. Even though you can be standing side by side to another person in the same environment, there will just be two entirely different experiences. One of a practiced negativity and never being there, always striving and saying, oh, I'll be happy when I get there. And you or another person who has the entirely opposite experience of the beauty and maybe the view is what I was thinking there, the view and the joy and the beauty and that harmony that can come from that, and all those other wonderful things that we've been describing here today and that you could think of for yourself. Begin to make a list and focus consciously and practice optimism, gratitude, appreciation, happiness. Practice laughing and be like, ha, that's a funny thing. Nowadays, like when I drop something and then I go to pick it up again and I drop it again, I used to be like, damn, son of a. Nowadays it's like, That was funny. I dropped it twice there. I grab it there, drop it again. I'm like, huh, this is hilarious. What is happening? But see, there's two ways. There's 1,000 ways, but there are different ways to look at things, ladies and gentlemen. And remember, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I think I'll leave it there for today. That is an ultimate lesson on what you need to know about happiness and negative thoughts and feelings. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, to seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment, through a greater awareness and understanding of reality, of the nature of ourselves and of our minds and of our spirituality, and much, much more. And also remember to seek to discover the lost wisdom of the ages and the mysteries of our history. And finally, the main lesson of today, and what I say at the end of every one of my videos, is remember, ladies and gentlemen, that there is no way to happiness, because happiness is the way. It is what we must bring to life. And when we can finally do that, once we've learned the process and created the ability within ourselves to bring happiness to life, then all the things that we've been telling ourselves, oh, when I get that house, or when I'm that successful, or have this much money, become irrelevant. Because then we already are there. And then the entire process, the entire journey is wonderful. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I love and appreciate each and every one of you, once again, that spends time here with me, and Dr. David R. Hawkins and Dr. Wayne W. Dyer, and shoot, Lao Tzu from the Tao Te Ching that we did in the series of reading Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life from Dr. Wayne W. Dyer. If you missed that series, be sure to go to the playlists on my channel and check out what we've got there. We've got some wonderful playlists. I mean, that was over 88 episodes long. 81, maybe. However, as well as much more, diving deep into Hermetics and the ancient Egyptian philosophy of Hermes Trismegistus, and as well as many more things. But once again, just thank you so much. I mean, this is really important for people. I think if people can get these kind of subjects into their lives and into their minds more often, it can really make a difference for not only ourselves, but to helping lifting the consciousness of all of humanity, and hopefully pushing us, being the tide that raises all boats and pushing us closer, faster towards that golden age that we are all looking for, that we can all imagine. I mean, we're beginning to remember already, I believe. The more I see out of these open-minded spiritual or alternative information, or whatever you want to call it, mystical, there's many, many different communities that kind of circle or orbit around the same. It's all connected. It's all connected, ladies and gentlemen. But once again, if we can get there and be the change that you want to see, be the example that you want to set, and I'll catch you tomorrow on Wednesday as we dive deeper into the Corpus Hermeticum, the Divine Pymander, and finishing the chapter entitled The Mind of God to Hermes. It's actually just the mind to Hermes, but sounded more epic that way. All right. Thanks so much, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to expand the description for the book, a link to the book, so you can get it for yourself, to put it on your shelf if you want to follow along in this wonderful journey, or just for reference at any time you need. Because that little 2-3 paragraphs right there in the middle of the 3rd chapter or something is just the ultimate lesson on happiness and how we can begin to create happiness for ourselves and maintain and feel that fulfillment and contentment that we're all looking for so much. As well as a link to my Etsy shop and my landscape paintings, and C60 Purple Power, the most powerful antioxidant known to man. Give yourself the gift of health. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I love and appreciate each and every one of you once again. Be sure to smash the like, and I'll see you tomorrow on Wednesday Wisdom, diving deeper into hermetics. Be the change you want to see. Be the example you want to set.